Raising children overseas brings enormous challenges, but at the same time, huge benefits for our family.
And we want to share with you in a two-part video the top 10 challenges and benefits that we face in our everyday lives. And now in our second video, we want to share with you the top 5 challenges. The number 5 challenge is having to do with living in an urban lifestyle. Now I know some missionaries might live in rural lifestyles, but in our ministry we're focused specifically on the urban centers. So we've always lived in these gigantic cities with 1 million plus people. And there are challenges that come with that most people from our home country, the United States, would not relate to. So for example, we live in the 4th story of an apartment building, and we just live in an apartment. We've always lived in apartments. We've never had our own home with a yard and all those different kinds of things. I mean, there's several challenges that brings. Number 1, noise. So you always hear dogs barking, horns honking, garbage trucks picking up trash, parties going on in the next door. And so you just kind of have to learn how to adapt to that and to sleep through lots and lots of noise. For our kids, the biggest challenge is the issue of pets. We had a hamster for a few months when we were staying in the States once. Aside from that, we've never had a pet as a family. And that's a really big challenge for our kids and something that they talk about often.
The 4th challenge is education. There are 3 options with education that we found. First would be homeschooling, and we haven't chosen that for our family yet. Another option is international schools, which we have researched and found that there are English-speaking schools, great schools in almost every country that we've had to potentially look to move at. And then the 3rd option would be just a national school where they speak the local language, perhaps another language. And that's the option that we have chosen for our children. And we chose that because we want our kids to, for one, learn the local language, and then also to be able to interact, for example, in the neighborhood where we live with the local kids who live in the community, to be on the same schedule, the same school schedule, to have the same holidays, just so that we are a part of the life of the country where we live. The challenges of homeschooling that I've seen is that if we were to homeschool our kids, how would they really learn the local language and feel comfortable with other kids who live in our neighborhood, in our community, and also even going to church and being able to talk to their friends and not feel like they were just such an outsider. That's a challenge with homeschooling. And also that would be a challenge with international schools as well. I know that in every country there are always groups and clusters of international families, if they're American families or from other countries, but they have the common bond of wanting their kids to learn and go to school in English. But then at the same time, that it would exclude our kids from the local communities, from the local friendships that they could have, because there's lots of barriers if we live in a country and our kids aren't able to speak the local language. The 3rd challenge we face is safety and healthcare. One of the first questions we get when we're traveling abroad, moving abroad is, oh, is it safe there? Are your kids going to be safe? And of course we would never willingly take our kids to a dangerous situation, and living in big cities we just have to have street smarts. For example, we don't take the kids out late at night. We don't carry lots of cash with us when we're going places. And we just learn the city and learn our limits of what we can do. So we've never really felt unsafe in that sense. Healthcare is another thing. Going to the doctor in another country can be really intimidating. So it really helps to learn the local language and just use your smarts as a parent when doctors give you advice, which culturally may not be the same as advice we'd be given in the US. And another area is just natural disasters. 2 weeks before we moved to Quito, Ecuador, the most dangerous volcano in the world started to become active. And of course that made me a little bit nervous traveling there. Some of the flights were canceled even just days before we went because of ash. But we went anyways, and we learned that we needed to have emergency supplies in our home just in case the volcano was even more and more active while we were there.
So the number 2 challenge that we face is having a limited or even a non-existent support system for our family. So we live 6,000 miles away from our nearest blood relatives. And it costs over $6,000 for us to take the whole family to go back to the United States. So we very rarely are able to be in close contact with what we would consider to be our inner core family that can help with the support system. And we do have missionaries that are coming into our ministry that we would consider a part of our support system, but they very often come for training where we live, and then they go off to some other assignment to serve elsewhere. And so that's a very unstable support system. And so the best thing that we can do is really come close together as a local family and develop friendships in the area that we rely on as a kind of a pseudo support system. And the number one challenge that we face is fitting in. It is important for Jill and I in terms of fitting into our community and the culture where we're in, but we feel like it's even more important that our kids fit in the culture where they're serving, but that they also fit in the country where we came from, the United States. And so we have always held the philosophy that we want for our kids to thrive, not just cope, but thrive in the culture where we're serving and in the country where we come from. And that is not an easy thing to accomplish. The way that we have gone about addressing that is that we make sure that the kids are engaged in things in culture and in society when we go back to the United States, social engagements, church, family functions, popular culture even, that they can understand those kinds of things so that when they go to college, that they will have a vocabulary where they will fit in when they go to college. And in the field, we have chosen to put our kids in national schools where they're going to have the local language as the primary language that they speak in school, so they can thrive in both environments. Another important aspect to this whole thing of fitting in is the question of where are you from? We've come into contact with lots of missionaries, and oftentimes missionaries' kids are not really sure how to answer that question of where they're from. They might say the country they're born or the country they're currently living, but there's this kind of this spirit of confusion. And we have not wanted that for our children. And so our kids identify with having come from the United States. Even though our oldest daughter was actually born in Guatemala, she still identifies with coming from the United States. And it's not important that they identify as being American specifically. It's important that they know who they are and they have an identity from somewhere, and that they don't live in a spirit of confusion as to where they come from. Can you think of any more advantages or disadvantages for raising kids while you live abroad? Put your thoughts in the comments below, and we'd like to hear what you're thinking. If you like this video, smash the like button down below, and if you want to see more videos like it, hit the subscribe button and the little bell next to it so you know when new videos come out.